So we're just gonna clean that up real quick, because I don't really know why, but I felt it was important to explain Fry's thing about the comic Oedipal situation. Yeah.
Are your PowerPoints going to be online?
Yeah, don't count on them though, because I'm not doing a PowerPoint for every class. But yeah, I'll put them up. We're having one today for part of it, but that's actually a novel thing. Maybe I'll end up doing one for every class, but I don't think so. It's not as fun as it looks. Okay. Did we talk about the allegory of the banana peel?
No.
Okay. So this is the best way to explain the comic sequence that Fry's talking about. Fry didn't invent this. This is all over the place. I think the earliest I've seen it clearly articulated is actually in the German idealist philosopher Hegel. Anyone read Hegel? No, he's a hoot. You should read him in your spare time. But anyway, so the banana peel slip is another one of those universally comic things, right? So you've got a picture like a really super cool oiled up frat boy in a tank top strutting. Banana peel. Whoosh. Good. Funny, right? Why is that funny?
He looks like an idiot.
Yeah. So we get. Here's my theory. If you have a different interpretation, my theory is that he thinks that because if somebody's just normally walking, like you see an old guy, well, that's a different. You just see like just a regular person, just a guy walking.
The surprise.
Yeah, so it's the surprise, but I think it's funnier with the oiled up muscle guy than just say like an average me. You know, like I go and I trip and I fall down and you sort of expect it. I just look like the kind of. The theory goes that because the defenders of comedy throughout the ages of comic theorism started with Aristotle, by the way. No, I guess Plato had a little bit on it. But anywho, they're saying it's okay to laugh at folly, right? So if you laugh at an old guy falling down, then you're kind of a jerk. But if you laugh at the big oiled up guy falling down, it's okay because he's vain, right? So he thinks he's better than us. He thinks he's above being human, and then so this is the logic of satire. Is just but it turns out he's just as big of a jackass as the rest of us, right? Maybe I shouldn't say jackass with that thing on. Oh well. But so you know, we laugh, and that's satire, you know, like when a really demure pretty, you know, Southern belle farts. It's the same kind of thing, right? No. All right, but but we plug that into the Shakespearean / Fry program. That's the tragic fall, right? And then if you think about it, it's like, yeah, what's the, you know, like if you just generally speaking, don't think about it too hard because it doesn't really work for Oedipus or Antigone, which we said we did. But usually, you know, the tragic fall happens because of hubris, right? Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. So you think that you're so cool, and that inevitably is going to lead you to the fall, the Icarus thing, right? Anybody know Icarus? Okay. Anybody not know Icarus? All right, quick, Icarus. Someone. Yeah.
He built a pair of wax wings and wanted to fly to the sun like a god. And he got too close, the wings melted, and he plummeted down to Earth.
And died.
Yes, well, yeah, naturally.
It's funny because he fell because he was satire. But what we're looking for here, so the extra twist that makes it a comedy would be that. So we've got our oiled up frat boy on the ground. Gets up, looks around. So and that's the comic. That's the proper comedy, right? That brings us like past the tragedy, past the satire, to the comedy, and it's sort of the affirmation of stupidity that certain people in the front row don't like. I'm sorry, I won't. So that's the. So it turns out what really makes him just like us, and what we can really relate to in our higher comic selves, is that we all sort of have that in us, supposedly. But like if you look at it as being less of a jackass and more of just like refusing to sort of submit to your degraded, just human place in the universe, people find this affirming. And then so this moves to the logic of the. So you see how Fry takes this banana peel sequence, and then he elevates it to the spiritual. And then so it was you, right? You were sitting over there last time. You accused Fry of
No, Pinker.
No. You accused Pinker of something too, but
Yeah, okay.
But you said that he was describing the Eucharist when he was talking about the cannibal resurrection ceremony, right? So in Fry's reading, he just mentions it elsewhere in a published lecture. He never actually says it in his that I found, but he reads the Passion of Christ as a comedy in the same way. Can we see how maybe that would work? Okay, so you've got this guy claiming he's the Son of God, saying he's better than everybody. I guess he didn't really claim, but the word on the street is this is the Son of God. Did he ever call himself this? I don't remember. No, horrible theologian. And so he's going around, and then gets his tragic fall. I mean, it's really like a satire. It works like a medieval mystery play. He gets put up on the cross. Everybody's making fun of him. He has a sign that says King of the Jews. Obviously, this is not meant as an affirmation thing. They're all making fun of him. Ha ha! You thought you were the Son of God. Look at you now. And then that's his tragic fall. But then guess what? Right? Turns out he really was the Son of God. Bounces up, resurrected, and so the whole the Christian and that's the Christian comedy that Fry will talk about. Yeah.
So then is him ascending to heaven kind of like the green world, and then coming back?
I guess technically the green world would be on the cross by the sequence. So you see how these things break down. That's
It's a pleasant green
well, as Samuel Beckett Snell says, nothing's funnier than suffering. So maybe, yeah.
Does that mean the tragic fall can be willing?
That's a good question, and we're gonna look at that, especially when we get to Othello and on Macbeth, and really we're gonna see a lot of that. That there seems to be some sort of impulse to purposefully fall, but that's a subtlety that we don't have to deal with just yet. But good observation. What's the yeah, I guess it was anywho. So yeah, so that's the and then so Fry, to avoid controversy, and you figure he's writing in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Like people would get upset if he was first of all calling, like Freud called the Eucharist ceremony quasi-cannibalistic, and he really got raked over the coals for it. So not everybody was doing that. I'm not going to go too much into this because I don't want to go over it again today. Yeah, we'll do that today. Okay, the comic Oedipal situation. Just want to do this real quick. So what is a not comic Oedipal situation? What's an Oedipal situation? I know we've got some psychology majors in here. You go over this for like 15 minutes in Psych 101. Yeah.
Isn't this like the person that you could potentially date or marry? Like without knowing it, you like see your mom or something in them. And
Yeah, that's a consequence that people think. But so the Oedipal situation is just so you've got it. The Oedipal triangle is you've got daddy, mommy, and baby, son. We won't get into the female version of this because you think this is crazy. So I've got a whole spiel, and I could take the whole time in this, but we'll make it short and sweet. So the idea is that the baby loves mommy, right? And then so you picture and really let's not put too fine a point upon it. The baby. Does anybody know any babies?
How
Yeah,
baby's
so-
baby?
Yeah, like we'll say premier, like like between like 1 and 3 months, or 1 and 6 months rather. Okay, so these guys are. Some people think they're cute. I think they're atrocious looking. I even think baby snakes are cute, but I like puppies, hamsters. Like but little they're bald and they're fat and they don't look good. I don't know. Anyway, so they sort of can't differentiate the world largely. They're doing some tests in psychology, so you psychologists might call me out on this because they can. But largely, they don't really have a sense of like you and me, and it's just sort of, when they cry, it's not, I really would like some extra salt on this, it's like, no, it's general discomfort there, right? And then they sort of get a sense of mom, but like anybody that takes care of them, they sort of get the same response too. And so mommy's really an object, the baby doesn't love mommy because of all the baby respects everything that mommy's been through, and just thinks she's a great person. It's sort of this source of you get to be held. So you figure like this is like the ultimate in hedonism, right? So you picture yourself a baby. So you're sitting there nursing, laying on this nice pillow, getting food from it, while being completely encased in a nice warm hug. And then the ultimate would be to poop at the same time. And then you're living the life, man. Like this. So this is exactly what's going on. So you picture this, and then you go into the mythology of it. You picture this is exactly what the baby's doing. And then but this is we're getting a little bit older now. This has been going on for a while, and the baby's getting a little bit older. And then so this is in the Freudian scenario. Then Daddy comes home from a long, hard day's work, and he's feeling kind of grumpy, and he's just kind of stomping around the house. And has anybody ever been in a bad mood and seen like a happy person? So this is what. So Daddy was going, "Hi, honey, I was working. Oh, don't tell me about it. I was going to give you." And looks at the baby, and the baby's like, "You know what? No." So this is the primordial no of the law so bam, like you get removed from the breast, and then this is a lot of interesting things happen here. So one is who your enemy in life is, right? It might not be, you might grow to love and respect your father, but this thing that he does that took away your thing, right, is you're never really going to forgive him. So, and you can be a law-abiding citizen, but like most people, if you give them a chance to be naughty, they'll be naughty one way or the other, right? And it's also the birth of actual, desire, right? Because babies have wants and babies have needs, but they don't really, you just cry, and then the baby might not have any idea what's wrong. So you try feeding the baby, change the baby's diaper, rub the baby's ears, whatever's done with babies. Yeah. Don't let me hold your baby. But now it's like with this no, right? And this is for Freud, and so it may well be wrong, for all I know. But this is now the baby knows what it wants because it was taken away, and like that's the thing. So it's the object par excellence in the scenario is the breast, but it's just the thing that's taken away, right? So this is why Freud said that you've got this sexual desire for his mother, and when he formulated the Oedipal complex, he was still on the theory that the only motivating factor in human behavior was sexual, right? He later abandoned that, but at this time, so the idea was that this desire for the all pleasure-giving object was essentially sexual. So this is why you get the idea that you secretly want to sleep with your mother or whatever. Yeah.
I didn't know he later abandoned the idea that sex was the primary thing.
Are you trained in cognitive psychology by any chance?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'm taking
because
some classes.
nobody, you just dismiss Freud with that, but yeah.
But what did he?
Well,
profess
first he encompassed. We'll talk.
Okay.
I don't want to turn this into a Freud class. Yeah, Freud. What are you gonna do? So but so in the another big criticism of the Oedipal complex, and like so everybody dismisses it. I really don't want to have sex with my mom, and I don't think most people do, but maybe I don't know. I'm gonna look stupid someday maybe, but the idea of successfully traversing the Oedipal complex is so you've got this bunched up, and so the infantile Oedipal complex that you need to get through is that you equate daddy with law. And so you kind of hate but want to be, because you want to be that, but at the same time you hate that. So you're really in this ambivalent situation, right? And then you want mommy in the object, but you also want to consume mommy because that was your source of food. And then you really kind of never forgave her because later you figure out that these two characters have something going on the side, and that's not cool. And but to see, that's why I lost my basketball scholarship right there. I think I have another one. Please. Technical difficulties. So, any questions? Okay, good. So the idea is that if you traverse this, the baby becomes a well-adjusted adult. That's what we gotta put this. We've got envies, loves, hates all at the same time. Loves, wants, and resents. So, and then mommy becomes wifey, and daddy becomes law. And that's so translating the Oedipal scenario into this scenario is what happens to the normally to normal boys apparently. And then so he said that like if the well-adjusted adult didn't so like in his thing would be like so the diagnosis of one possible diagnosis that he had about 50 different versions of this, but one of them for like being if you're homosexual, it means that this somehow got confused coming up or whatever, or like you want to stay a baby and you're one of those guys that likes to wear diapers and an octomom do something on that anyway. Yeah, so that's the normal situation, and you're supposed to sort of respect the law, and you're supposed to love and sublimate your aggression toward the wifey, and so that's the well-adjusted. But things go wrong, like if you don't sublimate the aggression and the cannibal thing goes on there, then there's your sadistic attitude toward women, or does this make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Marvelous. And blah blah blah. That's not important. Yeah, we're just gonna kind of blow through this. So let's get to so what's going on in Shakespeare? So I remember when Shakespeare went back in time, he had read and dismissed Freud before he started writing his plays. Because remember, he's from 400 years in the future from now, and he read the whole library. And he knew stuff that we don't even know yet. But so let's take the situation of that we see in Midsummer Nights Dream. So we start off with who's in the daddy/law position? in Midsummer Nights Dream? Okay, so he's the father that we see, but he's got a problem, right? So he sort of fails. No? Because, all right. So picture this. All right. So say Obama's in town, you know, to give a speech, and you know, I'm 10 years in the future. I have a daughter that's not doing what I say. She's like not coming home on time for their curfew. And I go to Obama, you know, except Obama's a king, okay? I'm like, hey man, can you tell my daughter to please come home on time? Does that mean that I'm a good, strong father that's pulling up my... There's a problem with the father function, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got this doubling, at least. So we have Theseus up here too. And then, so this is impotent. And this is, well, we'll see. I'll put a question mark. All right. And then so the mother per se doesn't show up, but who's the what's the object? The object of desire type thing. And don't think, Garber. Let's not get to the Indian boy yet. So who's the mom replacement? Who's the boob? So we got Hermia. But we also have Helena, right? And then, so let's leave the fairies out of this for now, because that gets really complicated. And then, so who's the baby then? Yeah. Okay. So we've already got everything kind of doubled, and there's all these problems, right? Because they both want her, and he's repulsed by her. So this, I wish I could have left that up. So that's just part of the relationship with the object he keeps toward her, but wants her, and you get and he used to be into her, right? And then something happened. And then not only does he not want her anymore, she disgusts him. And then, so these guys are kind of on his side. But so you got to where, wasn't in one when they talk about the difference, when Lysander talks about the difference between he and Demetrius? What was it? A little bit. He says not less, right? So, and then we'll see this with them too. It turns out that objectively speaking, they're a wash. So who wants who in the situation is more complicated. And we'll get into probably not this diagram more, but this is a good way to because these guys are always going to be rivals, and these ones may or may not be rivals. I mean, they'll be sort of de facto rivals, but these ones are going to have this love-hate relationship with themselves, between themselves. And oftentimes the people in this position will, I mean, one thing that's a good reason to do Two Gentlemen of Verona first is you would see that normally what happens is when one of these guys, so these guys would be best friends normally, and then one of them would fall in love with, you know, in Two Gentlemen of Verona, it's Sylvia. So there's two guys, there's Proteus and Valentine falls in love with Sylvia and really hypes Sylvia up to the point where he talks so good about her that then Proteus wants her, and Proteus dumps his girlfriend, and then they get in a big fight, and then Proteus tries to rape Sylvia in one of the early disturbing moments in Shakespearean comedy, but Valentine sees him, stops him, but then what does he do? Because the main deal is trying to reconcile this, and she says, well, you can have her. Romantic. Of course, he doesn't take her because it turns out that gift giving is actually an act of aggression. Have you ever noticed that? Do you have like a crazy aunt that gives you like gifts that you can never recompense, and she just holds it above you? Well, think about it. Next time somebody gives you a good present, consider it an act of aggression. It's a way to control you. So is this helping at all? Maybe? No. All right. Well, we'll get back to it maybe. Kind of take a flash screen in your head of it, because it can help you. Sort of orient the plays, because you'll see that this is Iago and Othello and Perdita, and you'll see it. And it's always sort of in that situation. So it's just kind of this implicit doubling of the Oedipal situation, which really complicates everything. And something that, yeah. All right. Clear your head of all that. These lights. Nope. What did that do? Nothing. There we go. So we do have another PowerPoint today. That wasn't worth it. Next time I go over and don't get to Oedipus, I'm just going to keep it me. I guess the last thing I want to say is that the comic Oedipus situation is a funny thing, because it seems like it's already comic. Like what Fry says is the comic Oedipus situation is that the comic character actually gets the mother. But that's exactly what made the Oedipus tragedy a tragedy, right? Mm-hmm. So why would actually getting, because it seems to me the comedy would be not getting the mother, like getting somebody else and like successfully taking the mother out of the equation. You see what I'm saying? Because like actually killing your dad and having kids with your mom, I mean, I guess it's funny. All right, Midsummer Man. Oh, it took away my fonts. So, such shaping fantasies that apprehends more than cool reason ever comprehends. So, this is something that's big in comedies, and especially in Midsummer Nights Dream, is this idea that that we're not actually reasoning beings, right? We'll see reason pop up, but reason has this kind of after the fact kind of existence that we operate off these myriad desires and impulses and compulsive behaviors, and we don't really understand it. And then somebody says, "Well, why did you do this?" And then you think of something, and that's reason. Reason in the sense of I'm giving reasons for. There's a certain kind of catastrophic epilepsy that some people have, and the only way that you can treat it is to separate the two hemispheres of the brain. And these people, their brain hemispheres are separated, and they do pretty well. They can just do some neat tricks though. Like they can draw a triangle with their left hand and a circle with their right at the same time. You can try to do that; it's really hard. And but it turns out that only the left side of the neocortex interprets information in a certain way. So you split their vision, and you have them do an association exercise, and you give them a picture of say the classic one has something to do with so like what's something to do with chickens. Eggs. All right. So there's eggs on this side, and there's like a winter scene on this side, or flip them, and then so they've got to pick something that has that's associated with it. So on the egg side, they pick a chicken, and on the winter scene with all the snow side, they pick a snow shovel, right? And then you take the blind away and say, well, why did you pick the shovel? Because they don't remember seeing the snow scene or the shovel for that matter. It just operates on what David Eagleman calls zombie drives, and I love that term. And then so what they do is they're not lying, and you say, why did you pick the shovel? Oh, to clean out the chicken poop from the chicken coop. So it's just this after the fact reasoning that so it's really we'll talk more about that too when we get to the part in the play, but that's sort of the kind of guiding thesis of Midsummer Nights Dream. So it has to do with midsummer May rites. You know a little bit about this. They're from, we kind of got to blow through this unfortunately, from Christian pagan rites, Wicca witches. Any Wicca witches in here?
I know one.
Are they a treat?
Yeah, they're interesting.
Yeah. And neo-pagans, I love seeing that on people's Facebook profiles. So they're still big in Northern Europe, right? In Scandinavia, it's still the second biggest holiday after, guess, Christmas, right? And then you're gonna start seeing and then of course Maine was big targets of Protestant reform. One of the big Puritans said that Satan presided at these things. But, I mean, there were pagan rites. I mean, but the same people were against Maine and the theater, and I guess that's the significant thing. And the central ornament was the maypole, and I put "yup" in parentheses. So this obviously has a lot of similar things. It's not necessarily a direct descendant of Dionysia, but it's the same logic, right? Down to the maypole. And then there's this other tradition that Midsummer Night Dream draws on. It's the Lord of Misrule. And there was a Lord of Misrule at a lot of the Midsummer rites, but it was also just sort of, some taverns just did it every Sunday for drinking. You know, you would just you'd just get some guy, usually some kind of big jolly fat buffoon, and dress him up in really bright clothes, and he'd go around and get really drunk and tell everybody to disobey the law. Again, it's just it's misrule, so it's the opposite of law. And I would love to tie this to the Oedipal thing again, but it's not really important. Robin King, so he's called Robin or King of May would be his things. But then something that both Mary and Elizabeth did was discontinue the court version of the Lord of Misrule, because even Henry VIII had these parties where they would just get some ding dong and dress him up and make him the Lord of Misrule, and King Henry VIII had to do whatever this guy said. It was just some ding dong, just off the street, and then so it was really important, I guess. But the world kept turning. I don't think he did. I think that it was just one of those things that you just don't do that. Like you can't, like the Romans in Saturnalia, your slave would hit you in the head with tomatoes, and it would just unheard of. You just don't punish him for it. It's just not cool. So what they did was they still wanted the ceremonies, but what they did was sort of stand off the side and watch, and it slowly. So it would be that it would start off with just the party would be there, but the queen's no longer participating in it. But it's still going on, but the queen's just this. But it gets smaller and smaller, and then the queen's high advisors don't want to partake. And then so the party gets compressed and put on a stage. And so and then it just turns into these masks, plays, and theatrical displays. And C.L. Barber, who I'm quoting here, Garber uses them a lot too. He's sort of the guy on Midsummer Nights Dream. So there's this detached holiday freedom. It's freedom in a cage. And Midsummer's Night Dream is sort of a direct. This play in particular. All right, so it follows the logic of a May game, and as all comedies kind of do, the green world. Because what would happen in the May game is you'd start off in the town, and you'd sort of go out into the country, the green world, where you can kind of frolic and everything. And this is deep rooted in rural culture, especially, and most of the people even in London at the time, besides the nobles, were rooted in rural culture, and this is sort of a ground up phenomenon. So one other reason that so much action happens, and there's so many songs and poems dedicated to spring and love, because they didn't have their own bedrooms and stuff in medieval England or medieval Europe, and it was really cold outside, So and like usually if you wanted to have especially illicit sex, which happened all the time incidentally in the good old days, most of it just takes place outside, like down by the creek or on I guess a very mossy rock or something. And this I don't know, I myself have never tried it, but I imagine in the English winter, the pelting sleet, that this is not really that fun of a thing to do. So when it starts warming up, you start getting excited, and you get to go out and play outside. So that's part of the. So Barber suggests that that Oberon functions as the May King because he's not impotent. He's very potent, but he's not a real. He's kind of an anti-Theseus, He's not into the law. He's got his law, but it's this arbitrary, wanton, obscene law. And Titania, the summer lady, so they would, along with the Lord of Misrule, they would have the summer lady and make her the queen of the festivities. And so you just dress up some country lass, and then the jester, of course, you saw in the picture of the photo that he had up, that the Lord of Misrule had his little jester with him, and that was just kind of his little henchman enforcer. So, and then you'll see in the play that Theseus and Hippolyta kind of take the role of the royalty that would be watching the actual game. And so, like Barber says, this is I think exactly right. The play happens for them rather than to them. So even though they're not really watching the shenanigans, directly, they sort of are. And then when from the play, you'll see that they actually really are. That's kind of important. Pay attention to that. Was that clear? If that's not clear, say that because I want to make that clear. Okay, so Theseus and Hippolyta they don't really partake in the action. They have the role that the nobility would have watching the slightly lower people actually enact the rites of May. So they're sort of they're halfway in between where we're sitting and the people that are actually affected in the play. Yeah, so in a sense, Midsummer Nights Dream stages the staging of an authentic May rite, which would have been how the highest classes partook. So it's a staging of a staging, which is kind of hip. We'll get more into that later. Just some fun facts about Midsummer Nights Dream. It wasn't probably the same. It wasn't at the theater that they showed it. It was probably just commissioned for a noble wedding. So it was really about a party, and just like the whole thing is really for a wedding party in the play, it really was for a wedding party. So there's lost fairy songs and dances to it. The casting for this production exceeded what the acting troupe would be able to do. And Peace Blossom and Cobweb and all them were probably just kids of the nobles. And Queen Elizabeth probably was watching the first performance. And we've already get to that. So some sources. It's famously one of Shakespeare's few original plots. There's no direct major source. The other ones are Love's Labour's Lost, Merry Wives of Windsor, and The Tempest. Maybe write that down. But there's lots of minor sources. The first one, because I forgot to put it on here and it occurred to me when I was walking over, is so write this down because it won't be on the slides. The Knight's Tale of Chaucer's. Anyone read Chaucer? So Knight's Tale. So it starts off with Theseus and Hippolyta, and something similar happens. It doesn't turn out happily because one of the equivalent of Lysander. You think that he's more Lysander than me. The equivalent of Lysander gets killed. Well, he was going to marry the girl that they both wanted, but then he dies, and then so the other one gets her, and then it's a big happy ending anyway because this girl is so awesome that she doesn't care if the person she's going to get married to dies, so long as somebody else replaces her. But this one is this wonderful Latin novel called The Golden Ass, and has anyone read The Golden Ass? If you have, you get an A already, and you can go home and never see me again. You just get an A in your transcript. All right. Oh well, this close. a lot of things happen in the Golden Ass, but this guy just accidentally turns himself into an ass, and it's just sort of his adventures. But there's one specific adventure of this crazy lady. He's a sideshow guy because he can do all these things that asses normally can't do, and this crazy lady, is really into him, so pays his handler for sexual access to him, and then you find out that she'd killed her husband in a jealous rage, and tells her the story, and she has sex with the donkey. And then the names and a lot of the fairy action comes right out of Sir Edmund Spenser's The Shepherd's Calendar, and lots of Ovid references. And this was a good point. This is something I just encountered recently that I was like, oh, that's a good point. It doesn't happen very often, but it's got a lot of elements from Titus Andronicus. Seneca did these really like horror, like really gross, gory, over the top tragedies of things like people taking revenge on people by chopping up their kids and serving it to them in pies and telling them afterwards, like chopping off. There's lots of chopping and stuff, but because you'll see Helena is really you'll see she's really messed up. Like it's sort of scary messed up.
Masochistic.
Are you okay with masochistic? I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, play masochistic's one thing, but like the real deal is sort of disturbing. So, faster. Combines Greek mythology with English folklore. So, and comic conventions. As always, Shakespeare takes lead with the fantasy. So Theseus. Okay. So first thing I want to say is Shakespeare's Theseus was from one source mainly, called Chaucer, and then one other source. So we'll talk about what his version of the story was, but I just want to tell you what the kind of cat that Theseus was. So first of all, mommy issues galore. First of all, his mom on her wedding night snuck out of the bridal chamber and snuck over to have a quickie with Poseidon, who is, anybody know who Poseidon is? Yeah. And so, to split the difference, he had two fathers. And apparently this works with because the biology is a different thing with the gods. And so he famously cleaned up the monster and robber infested road to Athens, and then when he gets to Athens with his father, his stepmother, the sorceress Medea, who's poor thing, she's got a tragic story of her own, keeps trying to kill him. So you go from one mom that cheats on your dad on your wedding night and gives you two dads, and then your stepmom keeps trying to kill you because she wants her son to be the heir. Defeated famous monsters, Marathon Bull, Minotaur, and the meanest centaur ever. But then his love life. This is bad. So Perigenia's father. So he goes and murders her father, and then she's running while he's slaughtering her family. And she runs and hides in an asparagus patch. And he's like, oh, don't worry, come on, I'll take care of you. This was just between me and your dad. And she comes out trembling, and then so brutally rapes her, gets her pregnant, abandons her. Hell of a guy. Something similar happened. I couldn't find the source myth on Abel's. And then his famous one was Ariadne. This was the Minotaur. You probably heard some version of this. She gives him the ball of yarn or whatever to help him out. So she totally screws over her father, so gets alienated from her whole family to help this guy. And then he's like, oh yeah, come with me. You've totally ruined everything. But she was just head over heels in love with him. And then they go and spend the night on an island on their getaway. And while she's asleep, he sneaks off and sails away. And so she's stuck, completely alienated from her family, and on Naxos, which is this, with all of these like crazy party guys, and nobody to protect her. This super pretty noble girl that's never done anything else. So it's a hell of a guy. Gets better. You've all heard of Helen of Troy, right? Well, Helen of Troy had some experiences before the famous thing. Theseus and his buddy decided they were both going to. They kind of flipped a coin on who was gonna get. I think it was Persephone, and then who was going to get Helen, because they really wanted to sleep with a child of Zeus. Helen, unfortunately, was like 9 years old at the time, but hey, he's Theseus, so why not? Goes and kidnaps her and keeps her as a sex slave for a few years before she's able to escape. And then, you know a little bit about this. After his marriage with Hippolyta, he falls in love with Phaedra, and then you heard about what happens there. That's a good picture. Yeah, so he refuses to have sex with her. She accuses him of trying to rape her. So then Theseus kills him. This is the version that I heard, the kind of the easier to summarize version. So Theseus kills him, feels really bad about it, and she feels bad about it too, kills herself. And then Theseus's end finally, he just, the whims of the population, they decide they don't like him anymore, so some guy named Lycomedes throws him off a cliff, and that's the end of Theseus. 4 minutes. Hippolyta, Queen of the Amazons. Well, actually, it doesn't matter. I was going to talk about that, but it doesn't matter. And there's two major versions, and you can't seem to reconcile them, and nobody seems to try. Hercules' ninth labor, you've heard of Hercules, I'm sure. His famous ninth labor was to steal her girdle, so he did that and killed her. Miraculously, Theseus abducts her, and then so the hopeful, and there are extant versions of this, and Shakespeare's version that he used sort of hints at this, a hope that maybe she eloped with Theseus instead of actually, being actually abducted at sword point. But by far, most versions of her have her being abducted against her will. This is kind of important. There's two big fairy traditions. At the time, fairies were getting smaller, but they weren't the tiny little fairies that we know today. They were either big and scary and mean and associated with witches and satanic rituals, or they were like little Chuckies, about this big. But they were bad and they were scary. Changelings. This was the main activity of fairies. They would any disfigured or developmentally disabled child was attributed to being an effect of the real child getting stolen by the fairies and given this other one. And I read an interesting study that probably about the same proportion of people believed in fairies then as now. A lot of people believe in fairies. Do you guys believe in fairies? If you do, if you've got a sincere and deep-held belief in fairies, I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of make fun of it. Not really. I respect people's belief in fairies. Oberon was adopted into English literature about a French song about a dwarfish magician. Allegedly, he was the child of Morgan Le Fay. You know Morgan Le Fay? And Julius Caesar. Titania. She's kind of a new character in things. She's the mother of Spenser's famous fairy queen. Drives her chariot up sleepers' noses, gives them wish fulfillment dreams, as Mercutio suggests in Romeo and Juliet. And she is the source of herpes and cold sores. Puck, Robin Goodfellow, Puck, you know about this, and so this was probably the first time that Puck was directly associated with the fairies. He was sort of a supernatural, sort of just all around, national prankster. Just anytime something went wrong, like when our frat boy fell on the banana peel, Puck put the banana peel there. Okay, that's going to have to be it because we're out of time. So all of Midsummer Nights Dream, reading questions, quiz on Wednesday. Sorry about, you won't normally have to ever read a whole play in one, but the holiday throws us off. And it's a short play. It's an easy read. There's lots of rhymes. What's that?
Friday's opening Saturday.
It's okay because he's vain, right? So he thinks he's better than us. He thinks he's above being human, and then so this is the logic of satire. is just, but it turns out he's just as big of a jackass as the rest of us, right? Maybe I shouldn't say jackass with that thing on. Oh well. But so you know, we laugh, and that's satire, you know, like when a really demure, pretty, Southern belle farts. It's the same kind of thing, right? No. All right, but but we plug that into the Shakespearean / Fry program. That's the tragic fall, right? And then if you think about it, it's like, yeah, what's the, like if you just generally speaking, don't think about it too hard, because it doesn't really work for Oedipus or Antigone, which we said were but usually, the tragic fall happens because of hubris, right? Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, so you think that you're so cool, and that inevitably is going to lead you to the fall, the Icarus thing, right? Anybody know Icarus? Okay. Anybody not know Icarus? All right, quick, Icarus. Someone. Yeah, think top. Strutting. Banana peel. Whoosh. Good. Funny, right? Why is that funny?
Feels like an idiot.
Yeah. So we get. Here's my theory. If you have a different interpretation, my theory is that he thinks that because if somebody's just normally walking, like you see an old guy, well, that's a different. You just see like just a regular person, just a guy walking.
The surprise.
Yeah, so it's the surprise, but I think it's funnier with the oiled up muscle guy than just say like an average me. Like I go and I trip and I fall down and you sort of expect it. I just look like a kind of. So the theory goes that because the defenders of comedy throughout the ages of comic theorism started with Aristotle, by the way. No, I guess Plato had a little bit on it. But anywho, they're saying it's okay to laugh at folly, right? So if you laugh at an old guy falling down, then you're kind of a jerk. But if you laugh at the big oiled up guy falling down, so we're just gonna clean that up real quick, because I don't really know why, but I felt it was important to explain Fry's thing about the comic Oedipal situation. Yeah.
Are your PowerPoint's going to be online?
Yeah, don't count on them though, because I'm not doing a PowerPoint for every class. But yeah, I'll put them up. We're having one today for part of it, but that's actually a novel thing. Maybe I'll end up doing one for every class, but I don't think so. It's not as fun as it looks. Okay. Did we talk about the allegory of the banana peel?
No.
Okay. So this is the best way to explain the comic sequence that Fry's talking about. Fry didn't invent this. This is all over the place. I think the earliest I've seen it clearly articulated is actually in the German idealist philosopher Hegel. Anyone read Hegel? No, he's a hoot. You should read him in your spare time. But anyway, so the banana peel slip is another one of those universally comic things, right? So you've got to picture like a really super cool oiled up frat boy, and then he elevates it to the spiritual. And then so it was you, right? You were sitting over there last time. You accused Fry of
No, Pinkert.
No. You accused Pinker of something too, but
Yeah, okay.
But you said that he was describing the Eucharist, and he was talking about the cannibal resurrection ceremony, right? So in Fry's reading, he just mentions it elsewhere in a published lecture. He never actually says it in his that I found. But he reads the Passion of Christ as a comedy in the same way. Can we see how maybe that would work? Okay, so you've got this guy claiming he's the Son of God, saying he's better than everybody. I guess he didn't really claim, but the word on the street is this is the Son of God. Did he ever call himself the Son? I don't remember. No. Horrible theologian. And So he's going around and then gets his tragic fall. I mean, it's really like a satire. It works like a medieval mystery play. He gets put up on the cross. Everybody's making fun of him. He has the sign that says King of the Jews. Obviously, this is not meant as an affirmation thing. They're all making fun of him. Ha ha! You thought you were the son of God. Look at you now. And then that's his tragic fall.
He built a pair of wax wings and wanted to fly to the sun like a god. And he got too close. The wings melted and he plummeted down to earth.
And died.
Yes. Well, yeah, naturally.
It's funny because he fell because it was satire. But what we're looking for here, so the extra twist that makes it a comedy would be that. So we've got our oiled up frat boy on the ground. Gets up, looks around. So and that's the comic. That's the proper comedy, right? That brings us like past the tragedy, past the satire, to the comedy, and it's sort of the affirmation of stupidity that certain people in the front row don't like. I'm sorry, I won't. So that's the. So it turns out what really makes him just like us, and what we can really relate to in our higher comic selves, is that we all sort of have that in us, supposedly. But like if you look at it as being less of a jackass and more of just like refusing to sort of submit to your degraded just human place in the universe, people find this affirming. And then so this moves to the logic of so you see how Fry takes this banana peel sequence